Could Prince Harry's life get any more complicated? What if the love of your life, the person you trusted above all others, had been hiding a secret so profound that it could unravel everything you've built? Meghan Markle's secret daughter with Joe Giuliano has finally been confirmed, and the world is only beginning to grasp the magnitude of this revelation. For Prince Harry, it's a heartbreak like no other. For the royal family, a scandal with ripples far beyond the palace walls. And for the public, a story so shocking it challenges everything we thought we knew about the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. It all began, as most explosive secrets do, with whispers. Whispers that seemed too wild, too unsubstantiated to take seriously. But whispers, when persistent, often hold fragments of truth. And in this case, those fragments grew into undeniable evidence over the course of months. Months during which Harry believed in the love, trust, and unity of his marriage, unaware that a shadow had been quietly looming. Could you imagine discovering, perhaps in a casual conversation or a rushed phone call, that your spouse had another child? A child conceived, nurtured, and protected, while your life together continued as if nothing were amiss. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. The story of Meghan Markle's secret daughter is more than a tabloid headline. It is a tale of secrecy, strategy, and power dynamics that stretch beyond a single relationship, reaching deep into the mechanisms of media influence, celebrity culture, and royal protocol. The confirmation of this child is not just a personal revelation. It is a seismic event, threatening to destabilize public perception, disrupt familial trust, and rewrite the narrative that Meghan and Harry have carefully constructed for years. But how did it come to this? How did such a profound secret remain hidden for so long, only to be revealed now, at a moment when Harry's attention is split between family, public duties, and personal struggles? Insiders have described Harry's reaction as one of sheer devastation. The private conversations he had with Meghan in recent weeks reportedly escalated from confusion to disbelief, and ultimately, to heartbreak. Imagine the weight of such a revelation, the kind that lands silently in a room, yet echoes loudly in the mind. Every shared memory, every promise made, suddenly reframed under the new knowledge that someone else, a child, was part of the picture, and that he had been excluded. How does a man come to terms with a truth that simultaneously feels foreign and intimate? How does one navigate the intersection of betrayal, love, and obligation when the eyes of the world are watching, analyzing, and judging every reaction? Yet, even as Harry struggled privately, Meghan maintained a calculated composure. Friends and associates suggest that while the revelation is undeniably sensitive, it was never entirely unplanned. There were hints, subtle gestures, and interactions that, when retrospectively examined, reveal a trail of breadcrumbs leading to this very confirmation. From selective appearances to strategic social media posts, to carefully timed interviews, Meghan's approach has been methodical, designed to control the narrative while mitigating personal exposure. But as with any secret of this magnitude, the tension of concealment eventually fractures, leaving cracks through which the truth inevitably leaks. It's important to understand the context in which this secret unfolded. Meghan's life has always been subject to intense scrutiny, from the moment she became engaged to Prince Harry. Every action, every choice, examined, criticized, and debated. Yet, despite this scrutiny, the confirmation of a hidden child introduces an entirely new dimension of controversy, one that blends the personal with the political, the emotional with the performative. The implications extend beyond private heartbreak. They reach into public opinion, media narratives, and the very structure of the monarchy itself. How does one balance these competing pressures while managing the immediate shock of discovery? How does the weight of public expectation intersect with private grief? The first signs that something was amiss were subtle, almost imperceptible. Friends of the couple reported unusual patterns: phone calls made at odd hours, sudden trips with vague explanations, and fleeting conversations interrupted by urgent private messages. These small inconsistencies, easily overlooked by casual observers, became significant when examined collectively. Each fragment hinted at a larger truth, a concealed reality that, when finally pieced together, revealed the existence of a child hidden from public knowledge. And when the evidence emerged, corroborated by multiple sources, the picture became inescapably clear. Meghan Markle had a daughter with Joe Giuliano. It's easy to speculate about the reasons behind secrecy. Was it fear of public backlash? Concern for the child's privacy? Strategic planning for media management? Or a combination of all three? Perhaps it was also a reflection of personal dynamics within the marriage itself, an attempt to preserve harmony while maintaining control over a narrative that could have been catastrophically damaging if revealed prematurely. But these speculations only add to the intrigue. The human element, the emotions, the motivations, the concealed decisions, are what make this story resonate far beyond a simple revelation of paternity. It's about trust broken, love tested, and lives forever altered by a secret no one could ignore. The confirmation of Meghan's daughter has already begun to reshape public perception. Fans of the Duke and Duchess are grappling with conflicting emotions: empathy for Harry, curiosity about the child, and skepticism toward Meghan's intentions. Commentators dissect every past interview, every public appearance, searching for clues that might have foreshadowed this revelation. Analysts debate the timing of the confirmation, suggesting it was strategically calculated to coincide with other events in the couple's lives, maximizing impact and ensuring control over narrative framing. It is a perfect storm of private heartbreak and public spectacle, a situation that is as emotionally complex as it is sensational. For Prince Harry, the emotional journey is ongoing. Reports describe him moving through stages of disbelief, anger, and sorrow, each more intense than the last. His private reflections, observed in fleeting moments by friends and confidants, reveal a man struggling to reconcile deep love for his spouse with the sudden realization of a significant hidden truth. How does one navigate such a labyrinth of emotion, especially under the unrelenting gaze of the media and the public? How does Harry process the knowledge that the person he trusted implicitly had withheld something so monumental? And perhaps most poignantly, how does he begin to rebuild trust, both with Meghan and within himself, in the wake of this revelation? As this story continues to unfold, it is essential to consider the broader implications. Meghan Markle's secret daughter is not merely a private matter. It is a revelation that challenges our understanding of celebrity culture, marital dynamics, and the intersection of personal secrecy and public accountability. It is a story that forces us to question the assumptions we make about individuals in positions of power and scrutiny, the lengths to which they might go to control their narratives, and the human capacity for concealment and revelation. The confirmation of this child marks a turning point, not just in the life of Prince Harry, but in the ongoing saga of the British royal family and the public's perception of those who inhabit its inner circles. And yet, even with this revelation now public, many questions remain unanswered. How did Meghan manage to keep this secret for so long? What role did Joe Giuliano play in the concealment or timing of the confirmation? How is the child's existence being addressed within the context of family, media, and legal considerations? And most pressing of all, how will Prince Harry move forward, personally and publicly, in light of this information? The answers to these questions will shape the narrative for months, if not years, to come. But perhaps the most compelling aspect of this story is the human element, the raw, unfiltered emotions that drive every decision, every revelation, every public statement. Betrayal, heartbreak, strategy, and resilience intertwine to create a narrative that is as captivating as it is tragic. As we prepare to explore the full story in the chapters ahead, it is worth remembering that behind every headline and rumor, there are real people experiencing profound emotional upheaval, navigating a complex web of relationships, loyalties, and secrets. The confirmation of Meghan Markle's secret daughter is just the beginning. And what comes next will change everything, and no one saw it coming. Everything starts with a whisper. That's what the insiders said at first, almost casually, as if a casual comment could undo years of careful planning and secrecy. Yet, in the world of the British royal family, whispers are never casual. They are the first tremors before a landslide. And the whisper that would eventually rock Prince Harry's world began quietly, almost imperceptibly, in the corridors of Hollywood, where Meghan Markle's past and present intersected in ways few could have anticipated. It started with a dinner party a gathering of celebrities and socialites, where Meghan, as always, was the center of attention. But this time, the conversation drifted into unexpected territory. Observers later described the room as tense, the air thick with unspoken truths. Someone, no one quite remembers who, mentioned a name, Joe Giuliano, a name that, for years, had hovered on the periphery of Meghan's life, largely unknown to the public. And then came the comment that would ignite speculation: a child. The words were casual, almost offhand, yet they carried the weight of an unspoken revelation. A daughter. Hidden. Private. Protected. At first, those in the room dismissed it. Rumors circulate in celebrity circles like wildfire, often without substance. But the seed was planted. The whispers grew, evolving into small conversations behind closed doors, text messages exchanged with discretion, and private phone calls that never reached the ears of the media. Every time Meghan appeared in public, questions lingered in hushed tones. Could the rumors possibly be true? Was there a child, carefully shielded from the public eye, whose existence had remained a secret even to Prince Harry? Sources described the atmosphere among Meghan's inner circle as charged, almost conspiratorial. Some were shocked by the revelation, others skeptical. But a select few understood immediately the potential magnitude of such a secret. A hidden child, if confirmed, would not only disrupt Meghan and Harry's marriage but also challenge the carefully curated public image they had spent years constructing. The whispers, initially dismissed as speculation, began to take on a life of their own. Meanwhile, Harry remained largely oblivious. As he focused on charity work, public appearances, and navigating his own struggles with media scrutiny, Meghan's world was quietly shifting. Friends recall noticing her unusual behavior, secretive phone calls, unexplained trips, and subtle evasions when asked about personal matters. The signs were there for those paying attention, but Harry, understandably, had little reason to suspect the full extent of what was happening behind the scenes. But whispers have a way of escalating. What starts as a murmur among friends and acquaintances can quickly become a storm once it reaches the right ears. And in this case, it wasn't long before journalists began picking up on the subtleties. A tip here, a leaked photograph there, a vague reference in an interview. Each element, insignificant on its own, started to coalesce into a pattern that was impossible to ignore. The press, always hungry for a story, began piecing together the fragments. Who was Joe Giuliano? Why was Meghan so secretive about certain aspects of her personal life? Could the whispers of a child be true? The early reporting was cautious. Outlets speculated without naming sources, cautiously hinting at the possibility of a hidden child. Social media buzzed with rumors, fan forums dissected every public appearance for evidence, and conspiracy theories flourished. Yet despite the frenzy, the story remained unconfirmed, tantalizingly out of reach. For Harry, this period was marked by growing confusion. Friends noticed his increasing concern, his repeated attempts to reconcile Meghan's behavior with the whispers he had started to hear. Was it possible? Could there really be a child he had never known about? As the weeks passed, the whispers became more insistent. Trusted associates of Meghan reportedly began confirming pieces of the story in private, each confirmation small, indirect, yet cumulatively damning. A photograph glimpsed for a fleeting moment, a reference in a legal document, an offhand comment in conversation, all pointed toward a truth Harry had yet to confront directly. By now, the speculation had reached the ears of key members of the royal inner circle, triggering a quiet but urgent dialogue. How should this be handled? What steps should be taken to verify the claims before they reach the public domain? It's important to understand the unique pressures of this situation. Unlike ordinary couples, Meghan and Harry's lives are under constant observation. Every action is analyzed, every word scrutinized. A secret of this magnitude is nearly impossible to maintain indefinitely. The very act of concealment increases the likelihood of discovery, and in this case, the discovery was only a matter of time. For Harry, the whispers represented a ticking clock. Each passing day without clarity deepened the sense of impending crisis, creating a tension that would eventually erupt into full-blown confrontation. Sources describe a pivotal moment, a private dinner in Los Angeles, where Harry and Meghan were alone, away from cameras and advisors. The conversation began innocuously, touching on everyday matters, but it inevitably shifted. The whispers could no longer be ignored. The topic of a potential hidden child emerged. Harry, initially skeptical, probed cautiously, seeking clarity without accusation. Meghan, maintaining her characteristic composure, navigated the questions with precision, offering enough to quell immediate suspicion but not enough to provide full transparency. It was a delicate dance, one that only heightened Harry's confusion and unease. Meanwhile, outside observers continued their quiet investigation. Journalists, social media sleuths, and fan theorists dissected every public appearance, every interview, and every subtle gesture. Connections were drawn between past rumors and present behavior, and slowly, the picture began to emerge. It became increasingly difficult to dismiss the whispers as idle gossip. For Harry, the evidence was mounting in real time, each new revelation a blow to his sense of understanding and trust. By the time the confirmation of Meghan's daughter with Joe Giuliano arrived, the groundwork had already been laid. The whispers had prepared the public mind, priming audiences for shock, disbelief, and debate. But for Harry, the journey from initial suspicion to confirmation was deeply personal, fraught with emotional turbulence and a growing sense of betrayal. He was no longer merely confronting a rumor. He was confronting a reality that threatened the foundation of his life and the perception of his marriage. As we move into the next chapter, the question becomes unavoidable. How did Meghan manage to maintain such a profound secret? What mechanisms were in place to protect the child, to prevent discovery, and to manage the timing of the revelation? And most importantly, what does this mean for Prince Harry, whose world has been irrevocably altered by whispers that began quietly, almost imperceptibly, but eventually grew into a truth too powerful to ignore? The answers lie ahead, in the next stage of this extraordinary story. The world doesn't just wake up one morning to a revelation like this. Secrets of this magnitude don't quietly surface. They explode, leaving shockwaves that ripple through every corner of the lives involved. And when Meghan Markle's secret daughter with Joe Giuliano was finally confirmed, it was more than a shock. It was a seismic event. One moment, whispers lingered like shadows in the background. The next, evidence had materialized, undeniable and overwhelming. For Prince Harry, it was the moment everything he thought he knew about his marriage came crashing down. The proof, as insiders later explained, didn't arrive all at once. It trickled in, piece by piece, methodically verified before it could be publicly acknowledged. First came the documents, a combination of legal papers, school records, and correspondence that linked Meghan directly to the child. For those outside the inner circle, these were just names and numbers, impersonal data points on a page. But for Harry, every signature, every official stamp, was a blow to his trust, a concrete reminder that the whispers he had begun to suspect were, in fact, true. It wasn't just the paperwork, either. Photos surfaced, carefully hidden, almost impossibly so. Friends of the child had preserved images over the years, capturing fleeting moments that confirmed the girl's existence and her relationship to Meghan. While these images were never meant for public consumption, the careful vetting by journalists and investigators ensured that the truth could no longer be denied. Each photo told a story, a daughter cradled, celebrated, nurtured, yet intentionally shielded from public view. And for Harry, seeing these images, even in controlled, private settings, was devastating. The timing of the revelation added another layer of complexity. It coincided with a period of heightened public scrutiny for the Duke and Duchess. Every media outlet, social platform, and fan forum was actively dissecting their appearances, statements, and interactions. The confirmation of Meghan's secret child arrived like a storm, amplifying the personal turmoil Harry was experiencing with a simultaneous public spectacle. He had to process grief, betrayal, and shock in a private emotional space, all while knowing the world would soon know and judge every reaction. Insiders describe Harry's emotional state as fracturing. First came disbelief. How could this be real? Next came anger, tinged with betrayal. Why had Meghan hidden this? Why had he been kept in the dark for so long? And then, sorrow, an overwhelming, almost paralyzing grief at the realization that the life he thought he shared with Meghan was now irrevocably changed. Friends reported seeing him retreating, spending long hours alone, processing in silence, and struggling with the tension between public composure and private turmoil. It's important to understand the psychological weight of discovering a secret child. For Harry, this wasn't just a matter of curiosity or scandal. It was profoundly personal. Every shared memory with Meghan, every promise made, every plan for the future was reframed through the lens of this new truth. The child represented a tangible manifestation of secrecy, a living reminder that his perception of reality had been manipulated, intentionally or not. It's a kind of betrayal that cuts deeper than infidelity. It challenges the very foundation of trust and intimacy. The public reaction, meanwhile, began to build even before the confirmation was fully formalized. Social media buzzed with speculation, fueled by leaks, anonymous tips, and insider commentary. Celebrity news outlets raced to verify sources, cross-reference documents, and uncover the story behind the whispers. Forums and fan groups dissected every detail of Meghan's past, tracing connections, identifying inconsistencies, and speculating on the child's current life. The anticipation built to a fever pitch, creating a pressure cooker environment in which the confirmation could not be delayed. When it finally happened, the revelation was both subtle and explosive. A single report, carefully worded, dropped into mainstream media channels. Meghan Markle had a daughter with Joe Giuliano. The phrasing was neutral, almost clinical, but the implications were anything but. For Harry, reading or hearing the confirmation for the first time was like standing in the eye of a hurricane. Momentarily suspended in disbelief before the emotional tempest resumed in full force. Details emerged quickly. Friends of the family provided context. The child had been born several years earlier, raised in a protective, private environment, and shielded from the public eye deliberately. Meghan had taken extraordinary measures to ensure the girl's anonymity, limiting public appearances and carefully managing interactions with potential leak sources. The level of secrecy was meticulous, bordering on obsessive, a testament to the stakes involved and the high-profile scrutiny Meghan had endured since marrying Harry. Yet, the revelation also raised questions of motive. Why was the child's existence kept secret? Was it purely for privacy, or were there strategic considerations at play? How did Joe Giuliano factor into the concealment, and what role had he played in managing the timing of disclosure? Observers debated these questions endlessly, attempting to understand the calculus behind such a profound secret. In the private sphere, however, these questions mattered less than the emotional reality. Harry was devastated, grappling with the knowledge that a significant part of Meghan's life had existed without his awareness. The immediate aftermath was a delicate dance. Family members, advisors, and friends sought to navigate the turbulent waters with caution. Legal considerations were paramount. Privacy, custody, and potential media exposure had to be managed meticulously. At the same time, emotional support for Harry was essential. Sources describe long nights of conversation, reassurance, and attempts to process what could not be changed. But even in private, the confirmation of the child created fractures, moments of tension, questions without answers, and emotional swings that reflected the magnitude of the revelation. Perhaps most tellingly, the confirmation forced Harry to confront not just Meghan's secrecy, but his own assumptions and blind spots. How could he have missed the signs? Why hadn't he asked more questions? Friends describe a period of introspection, during which Harry examined every interaction, every moment of uncertainty, and every choice that may have contributed to his delayed awareness. The confirmation of the child became not just a revelation about Meghan's past, but a mirror reflecting the complexities and vulnerabilities of his own judgment. And yet, even as the confirmation solidified, new questions emerged. How would this affect Harry and Meghan's public image? How would fans, media, and the monarchy respond? What implications would it have for the child's future and for Harry's role as a father, husband, and public figure? The answers were not immediately clear, leaving a tense, unresolved situation that demanded careful navigation. As the story continues, it becomes increasingly evident that the confirmation of Meghan Markle's secret daughter is only the beginning. The emotional fallout for Harry, the strategic considerations for Meghan, and the public scrutiny awaiting them both create a perfect storm of drama, uncertainty, and high stakes. The world is watching, but the most profound consequences are felt behind closed doors, in moments of quiet reflection, intense conversation, and unspoken tension. And just as Harry began to process this confirmation, another layer of revelation emerged, one that would make the heartbreak even more profound and the stakes even higher. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. The moment a secret of this magnitude hits, it doesn't just exist in the abstract. It invades the mind, consumes the heart, and reshapes reality. For Prince Harry, the confirmation of Meghan Markle's secret daughter with Joe Giuliano was more than shocking. It was devastating. Every fiber of his being, every assumption he had held about his life, marriage, and family, was thrown into turmoil. Friends described the scene in the days immediately following the revelation as tense and surreal. Harry, usually composed in public settings, withdrew from scheduled appearances and engagements. He retreated to private spaces within their Los Angeles home, seeking solitude and the opportunity to process what had just become undeniable. Those closest to him noted the profound mix of emotions: disbelief, betrayal, sorrow, and, perhaps most painfully, a sense of helplessness. Harry couldn't stop asking questions, a source close to the Duke explained. He was trying to piece together a timeline, understand what had been happening right under his nose, and most of all, why he hadn't known sooner. It was clear he felt blindsided, utterly blindsided. This private devastation was compounded by public pressure. News outlets had caught wind of the story, and even before the official confirmation, speculation had reached a fever pitch. Social media was ablaze with commentary, conspiracy theories, and analysis. Fans and critics alike dissected every public appearance Meghan and Harry had made over the past several years, attempting to retroactively find clues to the child's existence. The constant glare of public attention magnified the Duke's emotional struggle, creating a relentless tension that blurred the line between private grief and public scrutiny. For Harry, each day became a balancing act. On one hand, he wanted to confront Meghan, to demand clarity, to express the hurt and betrayal that had built up over time. On the other hand, he was acutely aware of the potential media fallout, the impact on the monarchy, and the implications for the child herself. Friends recall long, sleepless nights in which Harry wrestled with the impossibility of reconciling personal pain with public responsibility. The private reactions were intense. Harry reportedly confided in a small circle of trusted friends, sharing his confusion and heartbreak. Some tried to offer reassurance. Others urged him to approach Meghan calmly, emphasizing the need for facts over emotions. But even with support, the emotional weight was overwhelming. The knowledge that Meghan had kept a daughter secret for years, a daughter who had existed parallel to his own family life, struck at the core of Harry's identity, both as a husband and as a father. And yet, the devastation wasn't purely emotional. It carried strategic and practical implications. Questions arose about Meghan's motives, the potential role of Joe Giuliano in the concealment, and the timing of any public disclosure. Could the child's existence have been managed differently to prevent this level of shock? Was there a deliberate strategy behind the secrecy, or had circumstances simply demanded discretion? Each question compounded Harry's confusion and frustration, making it harder to separate personal anguish from the tactical complexities of the situation. The emotional landscape was further complicated by contrasting narratives emerging in the media. Some outlets portrayed Meghan as a protective mother, shielding her child from public scrutiny and potential exploitation. Others framed the secrecy as deceitful, a betrayal of Harry's trust, and a manipulation of public perception. In every case, Harry found himself caught in the crossfire, his own feelings overshadowed by speculation and debate. Friends described him as grappling with a mix of empathy, anger, and incredulity, a man trying to process both the human and political dimensions of the revelation. In private, Harry's reactions were intense and multifaceted. Reports indicate moments of anger and confrontation with Meghan, as well as periods of deep reflection and questioning of his own judgment. How could he have missed the signs? Why hadn't he asked more probing questions earlier? And most hauntingly, what did this mean for the future of their marriage and family? The questions offered no easy answers, and the answers that did emerge brought no relief. Adding to the pressure was the sense of time running out. In a world where secrecy is impossible to maintain indefinitely, Harry faced a race against exposure. Friends urged him to consider the timing of public statements, media interactions, and any steps that might affect both the child's privacy and his own public image. Every decision carried weight, every action had consequences, and every hesitation left him vulnerable to further emotional turmoil. Despite the personal devastation, Harry also grappled with broader considerations. What would the monarchy think? How would King Charles and the rest of the royal family respond? Would they see Meghan's secret as a personal matter or as a reflection on the family's public image? Navigating these questions required a delicate balance, one that Harry struggled to maintain amidst the swirling chaos of emotion and media speculation. Sources close to Harry describe a defining moment, a private reflection in which he confronted the enormity of what had happened. Alone in his study, away from advisors and cameras, he reportedly considered the trajectory of his relationship with Meghan, the role of the child in their lives, and the challenges of reconciling personal betrayal with public responsibility. It was a moment of profound clarity and, simultaneously, profound grief. The weight of secrecy, betrayal, and public scrutiny converged, leaving Harry both resolute and vulnerable. As the story unfolds, the true depth of Harry's devastation becomes increasingly clear. This is not merely a tale of scandal or intrigue. It is a story of human emotion, trust broken, and the struggle to navigate a world where personal life and public persona collide in ways few can imagine. Harry's journey through heartbreak, confusion, and the quest for understanding is only beginning, and the next chapters will reveal just how far-reaching the consequences of Meghan's secret really are. And yet, even amidst this turmoil, another shocking layer of the story waits in the shadows, one that will test Harry's resolve and challenge everything he thought he knew about loyalty, love, and family. But what comes next will change everything, and no one saw it coming. When a secret this massive finally comes to light, the world wants answers, but Harry needed them first. And for Meghan Markle, those answers weren't simple. To understand her perspective, it's important to consider the complex web of factors that had led her to conceal her daughter with Joe Giuliano for so long. Timing, privacy, reputation, and strategy all played a role, and the emotional stakes were higher than anyone could have imagined. Insiders describe Meghan's approach to the revelation as meticulous, controlled, and deliberate. She knew that once the story broke, there would be no turning back. Every word, every gesture, every public statement would be dissected under an unforgiving spotlight. But she also knew that the truth could not remain hidden forever. The existence of the child was no longer a whisper in the shadows. It was verified, documented, and circulating among journalists and investigators. Meghan understood that disclosure was inevitable, and the question became how to frame it on her terms. Her explanation, when delivered to Harry in private, was a mixture of vulnerability and reasoning. She spoke of her deep desire to protect her daughter from public scrutiny, from the invasive gaze of paparazzi, from the endless speculation that surrounds anyone connected to the British royal family. She described the years of careful planning to ensure that the child could grow up in a normal, private environment, shielded from the pressure and attention that had defined Meghan and Harry's public lives. It was never about hiding from Harry, she reportedly said in private conversations. It was about keeping our daughter safe. I never wanted her childhood stolen before she even had a chance to live it. Yet, even as Meghan emphasized protection and privacy, she had to confront Harry's feelings of betrayal. He had been kept in the dark, unaware of a profound aspect of her life. Her secrecy, while well-intentioned, had created a rift that now seemed almost insurmountable. Sources close to the couple described tense, emotional conversations in which Harry alternated between questioning, pleading, and trying to understand the reasoning behind years of concealment. Meghan, in turn, remained calm but resolute, framing her decisions as necessary for the child's well-being, even if they caused pain in the process. The timing of the revelation also became a key point of discussion. Meghan explained that she had waited until the child was older, able to understand the context, and sufficiently protected to withstand public attention. She acknowledged the difficult balance. Delaying disclosure meant Harry was unaware, but early disclosure risked exposure and media exploitation. It was a calculated decision, informed by years of experience navigating the pressures of public life and the scrutiny of the press. This explanation, however, did not immediately soothe Harry's emotions. Trust, once fractured, is hard to repair. While he understood the protective instincts driving Meghan's actions, he struggled with the secrecy itself, the fact that a fundamental truth about their lives had been withheld. The emotional terrain was treacherous. Harry wanted answers. He wanted accountability, and he wanted reassurance that future decisions would be made transparently. Meghan's explanation, while rational, could not erase the emotional sting of the revelation. Complicating matters were external pressures. Media speculation continued to escalate, with every new leak, photo, or insider tip fueling public frenzy. Meghan had to navigate the delicate balance of protecting her child, managing Harry's emotions, and controlling the narrative before it spun entirely out of her hands. The couple's private conversations were often interrupted or influenced by the looming presence of journalists, paparazzi, and online speculation, heightening the stress and emotional intensity of their discussions. Insiders note that Meghan also emphasized accountability. She did not present herself as infallible or above criticism. Instead, she framed her decisions as difficult but necessary, choices made with the well-being of the child as the top priority. She reportedly expressed regret for the pain caused to Harry, acknowledging that the secrecy had consequences that extended beyond privacy. But she remained firm in her belief that the child's protection outweighed temporary discomfort or conflict. As the private explanation unfolded, a complex picture emerged. Meghan's motives were not simple. They were multifaceted, shaped by a lifetime of public scrutiny, personal experiences, and a deep commitment to her daughter's safety. Yet, while the reasoning was sound on one level, the emotional reality for Harry was undeniable. He had been blindsided, caught between empathy for Meghan's protective instincts and the raw pain of betrayal. The conversations reportedly extended over hours, days, and even weeks, as Harry processed the explanation and attempted to reconcile it with his own sense of reality. Friends described him alternating between moments of clarity and moments of overwhelming frustration. The emotional journey was intense, punctuated by questions, confrontations, and attempts to find common ground. And then came the critical point, the timing of public disclosure. Meghan understood that, eventually, the world would learn of her secret child. But revealing it too soon could jeopardize the child's privacy, while waiting too long risked further emotional strain on Harry and the family. It was a precarious balance, requiring careful consideration of media cycles, social media speculation, and the inevitable leaks that accompany high-profile secrets. In these private moments, the full weight of the situation became clear to Harry. The revelation of Meghan's secret child was not just a personal betrayal. It was a strategic, calculated decision with implications for family, public perception, and the media landscape. Understanding the reasoning did not erase the pain, but it provided context, and context became a necessary step toward processing the shock. Yet, even as Meghan's explanation offered clarity, it left lingering questions. How would this affect the couple's future? What would the public reaction be once the story broke? And how would Harry reconcile his feelings of betrayal with his ongoing love and commitment? These questions loomed large, creating a tension that would define the next chapters of their journey. Because in a story like this, the private and public are inseparable. Meghan's explanation was just one piece of a larger puzzle, a puzzle that included media frenzy, royal scrutiny, and the emotional fallout that would ripple through Harry's life. And just as he began to process her reasoning, another shock awaited. A revelation that would escalate the drama and push Harry to the brink. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. The news didn't stay private for long. Within hours of Meghan and Harry confronting each other in their Los Angeles home, whispers had traveled across continents, reaching the ears of Buckingham Palace, Clarence House, and countless other corners of the royal family. And when it finally hit, the impact was seismic. The revelation of Meghan Markle's secret daughter with Joe Giuliano didn't just rattle Harry. It sent shockwaves through an institution built on tradition, hierarchy, and carefully managed public perception. King Charles was reportedly the first to react, though in private, with a mixture of astonishment and deep concern. Sources indicate that the king's initial reaction was a silent, almost imperceptible pause, a moment in which the weight of the news settled upon him. The monarchy has weathered countless scandals, but this was unlike anything it had faced in decades. A secret child, concealed for years, with implications for succession, public perception, and family unity, represented a profound challenge. The queen consort, Camilla, also reportedly expressed shock, tempered with concern for Harry's emotional well-being. Those close to the royal couple describe her as someone who immediately considered the personal ramifications alongside the institutional ones. Protecting Harry from additional public scrutiny became as urgent as managing the broader narrative. Meanwhile, Prince William's reaction was more complex. On one hand, he felt a brotherly responsibility toward Harry, knowing firsthand the emotional turmoil his sibling was experiencing. On the other hand, the revelation raised questions of trust, loyalty, and long-standing family dynamics. Friends close to William reported that he oscillated between compassion for Harry and frustration at Meghan's secrecy. The dynamic between the brothers, already complicated by past tensions, became even more delicate as William tried to balance empathy with the instinct to protect the family's image. Princess and other senior royals were reportedly briefed in stages. Their reactions combined shock, concern, and an acute awareness of the media storm that was inevitable. The palace, in private communications, recognized that containment would be nearly impossible once such a revelation leaks, even inadvertently. The court of public opinion becomes relentless, and every move, statement, and nuance is analyzed under a microscope. It wasn't just the senior royals who felt the impact. Advisors, press secretaries, and palace officials quickly convened to assess damage control measures. Strategies were discussed for how to support Harry, how to manage public messaging, and how to prepare for inevitable media speculation. Every detail mattered: the timing of statements, the phrasing of official communications, and even subtle gestures in upcoming royal appearances. The stakes were extraordinary, and the pressure was intense. Harry, in the midst of his own emotional storm, now had to navigate another layer of complexity. He wasn't just processing Meghan's explanation. He was also confronting the royal family's reactions, which ranged from supportive concern to cautious skepticism. Each interaction carried an emotional load, as well as strategic significance. Friends report that Harry felt caught between his private life and the weight of institutional expectations, a tension that only added to his sense of devastation. Complicating matters further were the conflicting narratives emerging outside the palace walls. Social media platforms erupted with speculation, discussion, and debate, framing Meghan's secret daughter in a variety of lights, from a story of maternal protection to one of deception and betrayal. Journalists scrambled for insider commentary, while fan forums dissected every public appearance Harry and Meghan had made in recent years, looking for hints or proof that had been hiding in plain sight. The intensity of the global conversation was overwhelming, and it fed directly into the royal family's internal deliberations. Behind closed doors, loyalty became a central theme. Harry found himself evaluating not just Meghan's motives, but also his own relationships within the family. Who could he trust with this information? Who would support him unconditionally, and who might prioritize public perception over personal well-being? Conversations with his closest confidants were punctuated by caution, reassurance, and sometimes conflicting advice. The delicate balance between personal loyalty and institutional responsibility created an almost unbearable tension. Interestingly, some sources report that the royal family's initial reaction included a degree of strategic foresight. They understood that the story, once public, would dominate headlines for weeks, if not months, and they sought to prepare Harry for the inevitable public scrutiny. Guidance was offered on messaging, media strategy, and emotional composure, with the aim of minimizing harm while supporting the Duke through a tumultuous period. But even the best-prepared strategies could not account for the emotional undercurrent, the raw, unfiltered devastation Harry felt every time the secret was discussed or hinted at in conversation. The tension between loyalty and duty also extended to Meghan herself. While Harry grappled with his emotional response, Meghan had to navigate her own relationships with the royal family, balancing honesty with discretion, empathy with assertiveness, and personal truth with institutional expectation. She found herself walking a tightrope that required constant vigilance. Every word, gesture, and decision had the potential to either build bridges or deepen divides. As the family adjusted to the news, sources indicate that the conversations grew more intense. Meetings with legal advisors, private discussions about inheritance and succession, and consultations with media teams were all taking place against the backdrop of Harry's personal struggle to process betrayal, confusion, and heartbreak. The private and public spheres collided in ways few could anticipate, each influencing the other, each heightening the stakes of every decision. Despite the tension, a thread of unity emerged in select circles. Certain family members, understanding the emotional turmoil, rallied around Harry, offering support and guidance. Their loyalty provided some measure of comfort, even as the broader institutional pressures mounted. Friends describe Harry as leaning on these relationships heavily, drawing strength from the rare moments of compassion and understanding amidst the storm of secrecy and speculation. But underlying all of this was an unspoken question that hung over every conversation. What would the public reaction be once the story inevitably broke? The royal family, acutely aware of their image, reputation, and historical legacy, braced for impact. Every statement, every gesture, and every omission would be scrutinized, interpreted, and amplified. The stakes were monumental, and the consequences for Harry, Meghan, and the institution were far-reaching. And as if the pressure weren't enough, a new twist was quietly emerging behind the scenes, a revelation that promised to shift the dynamics yet again, one that would test loyalties, challenge assumptions, and bring the royal family to the edge of scandal. The tension was palpable, the stakes higher than ever, and the next chapter would push Harry, Meghan, and the monarchy into uncharted territory. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. The moment the news leaked, even in subtle, unofficial ways, the world erupted. Social media platforms, tabloids, 24-hour news channels, and gossip blogs became a vortex of speculation, outrage, and fascination. Meghan Markle's secret daughter with Joe Giuliano had been confirmed, and the public's reaction was immediate, intense, and unrelenting. For Harry, the emotional devastation he felt behind closed doors now collided with the chaos of a global audience dissecting every word, gesture, and implication. The backlash was swift. Headlines screamed betrayal, secrecy, and scandal. Pundits debated the moral and ethical implications, while celebrity commentators drew sweeping conclusions about the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. Public opinion polarized, with some sympathizing with Meghan's protective instincts and others condemning her for secrecy, calling into question trust, loyalty, and judgment. It was a storm that Harry had feared, and now it was unavoidable. Friends of the couple report that the first wave of media coverage felt like a physical blow. For Harry, who had already processed shock, confusion, and betrayal in private, the relentless glare of cameras and news feeds added a new layer of pressure. Every conversation with journalists or public statements had to be navigated with surgical precision. Every misstep, real or perceived, threatened to be amplified into another headline, another viral clip, another trending hashtag. The social media response was particularly brutal. Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok exploded with theories, memes, and opinion threads dissecting Meghan's motives, Harry's emotional state, and the child's identity. The sheer scale of public scrutiny created an unprecedented challenge, turning private grief into a spectacle. Every friend, family member, and casual observer online felt entitled to commentary, and the couple's personal space evaporated almost instantly. Traditional media was equally merciless. British tabloids, known for their relentless coverage of royal affairs, were relentless in their pursuit of every detail. Leaks, anonymous sources, and past interviews were mined for any hint that could support sensationalized narratives. Every past appearance Meghan had made, every offhand remark Harry had uttered, and every public interaction between them was suddenly scrutinized under the microscope of scandal. One particularly striking aspect of the backlash was the way it forced Harry into an impossible position. He had to defend his family, protect his daughter, and manage Meghan's well-being, all while navigating his own emotions of hurt and betrayal. The public spectacle magnified every feeling, every doubt, every tear. Friends describe Harry as being on high alert, constantly calculating every move, every public statement, and every private conversation with Meghan to avoid further fallout. At the same time, Meghan's own response was strategic, measured, and yet fraught with emotional tension. She understood that controlling the narrative, or at least framing it carefully, could mitigate some of the damage. Interviews were scheduled, spokespeople briefed, and public appearances planned. But every effort to regain control of the story collided with the reality of an audience hungry for drama, judgment, and sensationalism. The media, it seemed, thrived on chaos, and the revelation of her secret child had created enough chaos for years to come. The intersection of public backlash and media scrutiny also brought unexpected allies and adversaries. Celebrities, commentators, and former associates of Meghan and Harry weighed in, some supportive, some critical, and many opportunistic. The couple's private circle became a mix of advisors, legal counsel, and loyal friends who had to constantly adapt to the ever-shifting landscape of public opinion. Every conversation about loyalty, trust, and support became entangled with media strategy, creating a dizzying and emotionally draining environment. Interestingly, even sympathetic media outlets struggled to find the right balance. While some recognized the human story behind Meghan's protective decisions, others could not resist emphasizing controversy, speculation, and scandal. Every sympathetic article was countered by a critical op-ed, creating a seesaw of narrative tension that made it impossible for Harry and Meghan to feel fully supported, understood, or safe. The public's fixation on Harry's emotional devastation also amplified the drama. News stories depicted him as heartbroken, confused, and betrayed, yet simultaneously under pressure to maintain composure, loyalty, and decorum. Every appearance, from charity events to interviews, was analyzed for signs of stress, sadness, or anger. Insiders note that Harry's emotional state became a secondary story in itself, feeding the media frenzy and adding to the intensity of the public backlash. Amid this chaos, social media influencers and gossip accounts further fueled speculation about the child's identity, age, and even future role in the family. Conspiracy theories proliferated, some believable, others absurd, but all served to keep the story in the public eye. The sheer volume of attention created a sense of relentless pressure, as if the couple could never step out of the storm long enough to regain perspective or control. Legal advisors reportedly urged caution. Every statement, public appearance, and social media post was carefully considered for potential consequences, ranging from defamation lawsuits to breaches of privacy laws. Meghan and Harry found themselves negotiating a precarious balance, revealing enough to maintain credibility, while withholding certain details to protect their daughter and themselves. The stakes were astronomical, both personally and legally, and every decision carried weight that extended far beyond the immediate moment. Yet, even as the media storm raged, a subtle undercurrent of support emerged from unexpected quarters. Fans and activists highlighted Meghan's right to privacy, her protective instincts, and the injustice of relentless public scrutiny. Celebrities sympathetic to her plight issued statements of support, reminding the public that behind the headlines were real people, real children, and real emotions. For Harry, these pockets of solidarity provided brief moments of solace amid the unrelenting pressure. Still, the combination of public backlash and media frenzy created a uniquely suffocating environment. Every day brought new headlines, new opinions, and new pressures. The emotional toll on both Harry and Meghan was immense, and even their closest confidants acknowledged that navigating the storm required extraordinary resilience, patience, and strategic thinking. And just as they began to stabilize, just as they tried to regain a sense of control, another twist emerged, a revelation about the legal, financial, and familial implications of Meghan's secret child that would elevate the story to an entirely new level. The media storm, as intense as it already was about to be eclipsed by consequences that neither Harry nor Meghan could have fully anticipated. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. For Prince Harry, the revelation of Meghan's secret daughter with Joe Giuliano wasn't just a scandal. It was a personal earthquake. Behind the carefully crafted public appearances, the charity work, and the interviews designed to maintain composure, Harry was grappling with a storm of emotions that few outside his inner circle could even begin to imagine. Betrayal, heartbreak, confusion, and a gnawing sense of powerlessness all collided, leaving him emotionally raw and unmoored. The initial shock was almost paralyzing. Friends close to the Duke report that he spent hours in silence immediately following Meghan's disclosure, replaying every conversation, every gesture, and every moment he had shared with her. He questioned himself constantly. Had he missed the signs? Had he misread her intentions? The intimacy and trust that had defined their relationship now felt tinged with uncertainty. Every memory was reframed in light of the secret she had kept. An unseen layer of life, hidden from him, that altered his understanding of everything they had shared. Anger followed closely behind the initial shock. Harry's feelings were complex and conflicted. He loved Meghan, but he also felt deceived. Sources indicate that he struggled to reconcile the woman he knew with the decisions she had made in secret. This internal conflict created moments of intense emotional volatility, where tears, frustration, and incredulity intersected in ways that left him drained and vulnerable. Compounding the emotional upheaval was the challenge of navigating loyalty to his family while processing betrayal. The royal family's reactions, varying from concern to cautious skepticism, only heightened the tension. Harry faced difficult questions about whom to trust, whom to confide in, and how much of the truth to reveal publicly or privately. Each decision carried consequences for relationships, reputation, and personal integrity. Friends describe him pacing, restless and agitated, wrestling with options that felt simultaneously urgent and impossible. In private conversations with Meghan, Harry sought answers. He needed clarity about the reasons behind her secrecy, the timing of her decisions, and the implications for their life together. Meghan reportedly explained her motivations as a mixture of fear, protection, and personal autonomy. She emphasized the importance of shielding the child from public scrutiny while managing a life already under intense media attention. While Harry understood the protective instincts, the emotional cost of being kept in the dark was immense. Sleep became scarce. Sources close to Harry describe long nights of reflection, punctuated by bouts of anger and deep sorrow. The Duke would often wake in the middle of the night, mind racing with scenarios, questions, and fears. The weight of responsibility for Meghan, their children, and now a secret daughter that had only just come to light added layers of pressure that were difficult to bear. Every decision felt magnified, every misstep potentially catastrophic. The emotional toll also began to affect Harry's interactions with the broader royal family. Meetings and conversations were charged with heightened tension, as Harry struggled to balance honesty with diplomacy, emotional expression with the need for composure. Family dinners, private briefings, and even casual interactions became exercises in navigating minefields of emotion, expectation, and legacy. Friends reported that he often felt isolated, caught between empathy for his family, loyalty to Meghan, and his own emotional upheaval. Therapy and close confidants played a critical role during this period. Harry leaned heavily on trusted friends and mental health professionals, seeking guidance on managing grief, betrayal, and the overwhelming sense of uncertainty. Discussions ranged from the practical, how to approach public statements, media interactions, and private communications, to the profoundly personal, how to process feelings of hurt, loss, and anger without letting them consume him entirely. Despite the support, Harry faced moments of profound doubt. He questioned the future of his marriage, the stability of his family, and the consequences of the revelations on both his public role and private life. Friends recount late-night conversations where he voiced fears of repeating patterns of secrecy, mistrust, and heartbreak, reflecting on his parents' legacy, past traumas, and the emotional burden of royal life. These moments highlighted the depth of his internal struggle and the gravity of the situation. At the same time, Harry wrestled with decisions that carried immediate practical consequences. Should they reveal the truth publicly? How much should the royal family know? What steps were necessary to protect Meghan, the children, and now a secret daughter from the maelstrom of media scrutiny? Every choice felt critical, irreversible, and laden with potential fallout. Adding to the complexity was the ongoing media frenzy. Every day brought new headlines, speculation, and viral social media content, all emphasizing the scandal and questioning Harry's reactions. The constant scrutiny acted like a magnifying glass on his pain, making private suffering feel public, intimate grief impossible to hide, and emotional vulnerability a topic for public debate. Friends note that Harry's emotional journey during this time oscillated between intense anger, deep sadness, and a measured, almost robotic composure in public settings. He sought to shield Meghan and his children from the worst of the fallout, even as he grappled with feelings of betrayal and confusion in private. His resolve to protect his family sometimes collided with the very real need to process his emotions openly, creating internal tension that was exhausting and relentless. A particularly critical moment came when Harry began considering long-term implications. The existence of Meghan's secret daughter raised questions about succession, family dynamics, and future public perception. It also forced Harry to confront his own role in the narrative, how to be a father, a husband, and a public figure simultaneously while navigating unprecedented personal challenges. The decisions he made in those days would shape not only his immediate future, but also the trajectory of his relationship with Meghan and the royal family.